What's one thing a therapist has said to you that you will never forget?
One of those random Tumblr screen caps that slips in between the memes and jokes and completely ruined me was, "We all become the person who would have saved us that time. No one did. You didn't know how to hold emotions, so you melted down and cried for no reason all the time, and got shamed for it, told you were broken and weak, and now you're the person your friends and even strangers feel safe showing their sadness and doubt and embarrassment around. People you thought you could trust used your most sensitive vulnerabilities to destroy you, to advance themselves. And now, you're the person people can trust to keep personal information with discretion, always, who would never bring up a vulnerability to throw a friend under the bus, ever. You were always told it wasn't worth trying if you weren't the best, and your interests were dismissed. And now you love nothing more than seeing people try things they love and supporting their efforts and passions. You've become the person you needed way back then, because you know how important that person is, because you didn't have someone to be that person for you. We become the person who would have saved us when no one did."
God, I felt this the other day. Growing up, I had more than a few bad experiences with boyfriends/men. And while my upbringing wasn't awful, I had next to no guidance from adults around me. Found myself in a number of bad situations. I'm lucky I got through relatively unscathed. I'm 38 now and a mother, and that's all far behind me. The other week, I witnessed an absolute creep and his friend in their 50s, 60s, trying to chat up some obviously still school-aged girls at the beach. The girls were telling him they were underaged and to leave them alone, but he was clearly getting off on the interaction, including that part, and persisted. I nearly just kept to myself, but instead locked eyes with him, shook my head, made it clear that I was witnessing his behavior, and stared him down till he moved on. Once he was gone, the girls thanked me. There was no drama, no real confrontation, but I was shaking. Nobody ever told that dude to get lost when I was 16. But instead of resentment or shame or whatever else I might have predicted I'd feel, I felt more like a mother protecting her den. Also, since my first baby was born, I vowed to myself, to my kids, and to my partner that I will always, always be on their side, and that home will always be their safe space. I didn't have that from my own mother, but I'm sure as hell going to be that person for my boys.
That child that was never loved or acknowledged is still waiting. Not on your parents, but on you. You are her parent now. Will you ignore her, not love her, not value her, and not find her worthy as well? You decide if she thrives or survives. Your parents let her down. Will you do the same?
I had a friend who is studying psychology say a similar thing, especially when I have issues giving myself an inch on anything and doing nothing but bully myself, wondering why my brain won't work right or anything like that. She told me that within my mind is still the child of myself, who has always been hurt, and that I'm still doing it to myself. And of course, he's freaking out at someone being angry, and that I need to apologize to myself, and that I'm sorry. It's not like it magically cured everything, but it certainly gave me a step in the right direction, and is good to remember.
She asked if there was anything I wanted to do in my life that I no longer thought I could do. I told her that I wanted to go to law school, but that was no longer in the cards for me. She said, "You know that you can still go to law school, right? No one has to give you permission." I'll be graduating with my JD in May of next year. I doubt she understands the true impact of her simple statement that day.
For me, it was, I'm a bit in over my head with you. To be honest, I'm going to have to refer you to someone else.
Today will be our last session. I feel you have accomplished your therapy goals. I had not, but it was time for her to move states to be with a romantic partner, so all of her patients were cured on the same day. A Festivus miracle.
If you were my client while you were a minor, I would have absolutely called child services. What? Why? They weren't perfect, but it's not like they were abusing me. Therapist. Not all abuse leaves bruises that others can see.
Just because someone is trying their best, that doesn't mean it's okay. For context, we were discussing a family member who just sucks at communicating. He often just ignores me, makes no attempts to get to know me as I am now, is generally just not a great family member. He's trying his best, but it's not good enough. I don't have to act like it is.
This was one of the most important lessons I've ever learned. But it went the other direction. Just because I'm right doesn't mean they're wrong. Sometimes someone being who they are crosses your boundaries. It doesn't make them a bad person, but that doesn't mean you have to accept your boundaries being crossed. And they don't have to change who they are to fit the space you have in your life for them.
You've brought up how Chipotle sending you just a bowl of beans in a DoorDash order has affected you 9 times in your last 25 visits. I believe you may be autistic. Spoiler, I'm autistic.
Notice the feelings, like leaves on a river. Call them what they are, then let them go. Let them float down the river past you. Don't judge yourself for having them, and don't engage with them. Simply acknowledge them, let them go, and move on. I remember these words vividly because it's a coping strategy I use almost every day.
Of course you're anxious. You're an introvert and a natural leader. They're not mutually exclusive. Effing nailed the root of my problem. I'd worked so long in sales, learning to be chatty. I forgot how much I like being alone.
Maybe the reason it's so hard to believe your significant other loves you is because it's the first time in your life you've ever experienced unconditional love.
When you get married, realize that you're marrying multiple people. Who you are and who your spouse is today isn't going to be who they are 10 to 15 years from now. Changed the way I view a lot of discussions with my partner ever since.
We got married young and included in our vows the phrase, loving what I know of you and trusting what I do not yet know, as an acknowledgement of this. It's been a good reminder over the years that the question is not, is this still the person I married, but is this still the person I trusted all those years ago?
For me, it was a time I was talking about how self-conscious I was when dating and what that other person thought of me. She told me, you're so focused on whether that person would like you that you don't even realize if you even like them back.
I had talked recently about my inability to find a partner because I'm looking for XYZ, and not a lot of women fit what I'm looking for. She paused for a minute and asked me, well, what kind of partner do you want to be? Blew my mind, completely changed my approach to dating.
I was asked something similar when I was much younger that really flipped the script. I was told to imagine my perfect girl. Not just what she looked like, but her sense of humor, her ambitions, her hobbies, her priorities and values. Then I was asked, what kind of man is that girl looking for? And it floored me, realizing how short I fell of that mark. Before I can yearn for my dream girl, I have to put in the work to be the kind of guy she'd deserve.
Your self-confidence will fluctuate day to day, maybe even minute to minute. That's transient. But what doesn't fluctuate is your knowledge, your training, your intelligence, and intellect. Those things stay consistent and improve with time. Don't put too much stock in your self-confidence being a measure of how competent you are. Trust in the other things that are consistent and concrete.
You can be alone, and that's okay. If only one person ever loves you, even if that person is you, it is enough.
She said, most of the problems that exist between couples revolve around differing, uncommunicated expectations of the future. I find it's very accurate.
You can't control how others treat you, but you can control how long you allow it. That really stuck with me because it shifted the way I approached toxic relationships and situations.
Someone being angry with you is not an automatic problem you have to solve. It's just a feeling they're having. It should prompt you to think about whether you did something to wrong them, but also, sometimes you didn't, and someone is just irrationally angry. And that's a fact about the world you have to get in touch with to feel better. That began a long, slow realization that I was a very codependent person who wasn't able to feel my own feelings because I was so focused on other people's feelings. 10 years later, I'm doing much better with that.
I told him, I'm a good boyfriend, I'm a good employee, I'm a good friend, and I'm a good son. If I can be great at those things, I feel like I would be much happier. He responded, "A good boyfriend is what you are to your partner. A good employee is what you are to your boss. A good friend is what you are to your friends. And a good son is what you are to your parents. What are you to yourself?" Completely changed my perspective on life. I had been so caught up in pleasing everyone around me that I lost myself in the process.